Libertarianism 101, Lesson 7, Non-Interventionism, Libertarian Foreign Policy. Welcome back to Libertarianism 101. We've covered libertarian philosophy, the non-aggression principle, the spectrum of libertarian thought, and Austrian economics. Now it's time to talk about foreign policy, because just like libertarians oppose government intervention in your personal life and in the economy, they oppose military intervention in other countries. This is called non-interventionism, and it's one of the most distinctive and controversial libertarian positions. Let's break it down. First, let's be clear about what non-interventionism means. It does not mean isolationism. Libertarians aren't saying America should build a wall around itself and never interact with the rest of the world. Non-interventionism means no military intervention in other countries' affairs unless there's a direct, imminent threat to American security. It means free trade with all nations. It means diplomatic relations. It means cultural exchange, travel, and commerce. What it doesn't mean is regime change wars, nation-building projects, maintaining military bases in 150 countries, or being the world's police force. The libertarian position is simple. The same principle that applies at home applies abroad. If it's wrong to initiate force against individuals, it's wrong to initiate force against other nations. The non-aggression principle doesn't stop at the border. You can defend yourself if attacked, but you don't go starting wars or invading countries that haven't attacked you. Let's talk about why libertarians oppose foreign intervention. First, the moral argument. Wars kill people, not just soldiers, but civilians, men, women, children who had nothing to do with whatever conflict we're involved in. When the US invades a country, bombs cities, or backs regime change, innocent people die. Libertarians ask, how can we claim to value individual rights and then support policies that kill thousands or millions of innocent individuals? If you believe in the non-aggression principle, you can't support offensive wars. Second, the constitutional argument. The US Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to declare war. That was deliberate. The founders wanted war to require broad consensus, not executive whim. But modern presidents launch military operations without congressional approval all the time. We've been in Syria, Libya, Yemen, Somalia. Most Americans can't even name all the countries we're currently bombing. That's not how a constitutional republic is supposed to work. It's executive overreach, plain and simple. Third, the practical argument. Foreign intervention doesn't work. Look at the track record. Vietnam War. Tens of thousands of Americans dead, millions of Vietnamese dead. And we lost. Iraq War. Trillions spent, hundreds of thousands dead. And the region is less stable than before. Afghanistan. 20 years, thousands of American lives, trillions of dollars, and the Taliban took over the moment we left. Libya. We overthrew Gaddafi and created a failed state with open-air slave markets. Syria. We armed rebels who became our enemies. The pattern is clear. Intervention creates chaos, doesn't achieve stated goals, and makes things worse. Libertarians point out that our foreign interventions often create the very threats we then have to fight. We armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 1980s to fight the Soviets, and some of those fighters became the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. We destabilized Iraq, creating the power vacuum that led to ISIS. We overthrew Iran's democratic government in 1953 and installed the Shah, which led to the 1979 Islamic Revolution and decades of hostility. This is called blowback, the unintended consequences of intervention that come back to hurt us. Here's what libertarians mean by blowback. Imagine someone breaks into your neighbor's house, kills family members, and occupies their home for years. Would that neighbor's relatives want revenge? Of course. That's human nature. When America bombs weddings, hospitals, and homes in other countries, even if accidentally, people there remember. They want revenge. And that's how you create terrorists. Our foreign policy doesn't make us safer. It creates more enemies. Fourth, the financial argument. The US spends more on military than the next 10 countries combined. We have over 700 military bases in foreign countries. We're spending trillions on wars and defense while running massive deficits. Libertarians ask, why are American taxpayers funding the defense of wealthy countries like Germany, Japan, and South Korea? Why are we protecting Middle Eastern oil when we could focus on energy independence? That money could stay in Americans' pockets, or at least not add to the national debt. Now let's address some common objections. People say, what about Hitler? What about genocide? Shouldn't we intervene to stop evil? Libertarians have different answers. Some say military action is justified if there's a direct threat to the US, or if Congress formally declares war. Others say humanitarian intervention might be justified in extreme cases, but it should be voluntary, through international coalitions, not unilateral American action. And many point out that we are selective about which atrocities we respond to. We intervene in some places, but ignore others, often based on strategic interests rather than humanitarian concerns. If we really cared about stopping genocide, our policy would look very different. What about terrorism? After 9/11s, many Americans supported intervention to fight terrorism. Libertarians said, and still say, that invading countries that didn't attack us doesn't make us safer. The 9/11's hijackers were mostly Saudi. But we invaded Iraq. We've spent 20 years in the war on terror, and terrorism hasn't been eliminated. It's spread. Libertarians argue for a strong defense at home, intelligence gathering, and targeted action against specific threats, not open-ended wars and occupation of foreign nations. What about alliances like NATO? Libertarians are skeptical. NATO was created to counter the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Why are we still expanding NATO and committing to defend countries that don't face any realistic threat? These alliances entangle us in conflicts that aren't our business and drain our resources. Libertarians prefer free trade agreements over military alliances. Commerce creates peace. Military pacts create obligations that lead to war. What about China or Russia? Aren't they threats? Some libertarians say yes, we need to maintain military strength as a deterrent, but they distinguish between defense and intervention. Having a strong military to deter aggression is different from invading countries preemptively or maintaining a global empire. And many libertarians argue that trade and engagement reduce the likelihood of war. Countries that trade with each other rarely go to war because it's economically destructive. Here's the libertarian vision for foreign policy. Defend American territory and interests, but don't go looking for fights. Trade freely with all nations. Use diplomacy to resolve conflicts. If another country attacks us or poses a clear and present danger, respond with overwhelming force. But otherwise, mind our own business. No nation building, no regime change, no occupations, no endless wars. Just defense, trade, and peaceful relations. Compare this to the current bipartisan consensus. Both Republicans and Democrats support massive military budgets, foreign bases, and interventions. They just disagree on which wars to fight and how to fight them. Libertarians are the only major political voice saying maybe we shouldn't be fighting most of these wars at all. Famous libertarian non-interventionists include Ron Paul, who spent decades in Congress arguing against foreign wars and the military-industrial complex. He predicted the disasters in Iraq and Afghanistan. He warned about blowback, and he was dismissed as crazy until events proved him right. Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, and Rand Paul have carried on this tradition, consistently voting against unauthorized military action. There's also a left libertarian and right libertarian divide here. Right libertarians tend to be more concerned about national defense and might support a stronger military posture, even while opposing intervention. Left libertarians tend to be more radically anti-war and anti-military, emphasizing the moral costs of militarism. But both agree, no offensive wars, no empire, no world policing. Here's the economic connection. Remember Austrian economics from the last lesson? War is the ultimate central planning project. Government decides where resources go, what gets produced, who lives and dies. It's the opposite of free markets and voluntary exchange. Plus, war always expands government power at home. Civil liberties get restricted, surveillance increases, deficits explode. The war on terror gave us the Patriot Act, NSA spying, and indefinite detention. Libertarians say, war abroad means tyranny at home. So where does this leave us? Libertarian foreign policy is radically different from the status quo. It means bringing troops home, closing most foreign bases, ending regime change operations, and drastically cutting the military budget. It means prioritizing defense over offense. It means admitting that we can't solve other countries' problems through force, and that trying to do so makes us less safe and less free. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about property rights, why libertarians think they're the foundation of all other rights, how they work, and what happens when they're not protected. This is crucial for understanding libertarian positions on everything from pollution to intellectual property to land ownership. But for now, you understand libertarian foreign policy. Non-interventionism means no offensive wars, no empire, and no world policing. It means defense, trade, and peace. It applies the non-aggression principle to international relations, and it's one of the clearest examples of how libertarian principles lead to very different policy conclusions than mainstream politics. If you're learning from this series, subscribe and hit the bell. Comment below. Do you agree with non-interventionism, or do you think America has a responsibility to intervene? What's your biggest question about libertarian foreign policy? Let's discuss. Welcome back to Libertarianism 101. See you next time. Next up, property rights. The foundation of liberty.